It's 8 o'clock in New York City, and we start with a Fox News alert. That is a live look in Midtown Manhattan. That is at 48th and 8th Avenue, 42nd and 8th Avenue, where the fire department of New York now confirming an explosion near that site. Reports of some sort of a bomb near the Port Authority. This is all happening at the height of rush hour. Apparently, the explosion was at 7:25 this morning. The police, as you can see, clearing out several subway lines beneath the station. There are reports that the areas surrounding the station are also on lockdown and have been evacuated. A bomb squad is on the scene. We have a crew on the way. As you can see, we've got live pictures there as well.
Right. So you have a situation where if you're locally, this means a lot. If you've traveled here, you'll know the AC and E lines have been evacuated immediately. There are reports of the term enormous blast. The FDNY saying it's some kind, or reports of some type of an explosion. I see also that ABC saying that other sources are telling them it was a pipe bomb.
All right, so we haven't confirmed that there's a bomb yet. We're reading reports from the NYPD. They are saying explosion. There are reports of maybe a type of bomb. We'll know more as the story develops. If you're not from here, I used to live, this was the first apartment I had when I moved into New York, which was on this block, and I lived there for just until I could find my footing here in New York. It's a very busy area. If you haven't been there, what happens is all of the buses that come out of New Jersey, that come into the city, a lot of people commute from the suburbs. A lot of buses come from Long Island, from Staten Island. They come in and they drop people off in the morning. Yep. Also, it's Christmas time, so you've got so many tourists here in New York City this month, more tourists than we have during other times of the year. And there are also, when you go downstairs, when you enter into the terminal there, the bus terminal, you go downstairs, all the subway lines connect there. This is 42nd Street. Right. This is Times Square. It's extremely busy.
But this time of morning, and the explosion was apparently at 7:25 this morning, as the police apparently, they're trying to figure out what happened. Mainly, the Port Authority is the input where all the people from New Jersey who are coming in on the buses get off and then scattered throughout New York City. My daughter is actually in the bus lane right now, waiting to get...
What is she saying?
Well, she said that apparently the phones are jammed. She said apparently people are getting a lot of phone calls from their loved ones to make sure they're okay. Apparently on the bus she's on, she said somebody said, according to somebody on Twitter, there was a bomb and shots fired. We have not heard that. She is saying that the people on the bus are terrified because they are in the Lincoln Tunnel, and then they come out of the Lincoln Tunnel into New York at the Port Authority, and they have heard these reports that apparently some sort of a bomb went off there.
When you go on Amtrak, there is some type of security in the path. They'll see you, they'll walk you, they'll eyeball you. You'll have to go through and hand a ticket. Not in this situation at the Port Authority. Not obviously with the subways. Sometimes abstractly they'll have different bag checks. Sometimes you'll see cops there. Maybe they got an alert, or maybe they're trying to throw off a would-be terror attack, so let them not think there's a pattern. But when you talk about the Port Authority, you talk about something that you just have a lot of the surveillance that you see, you don't understand, or it's not transparent.
Well, everyone's on high alert in New York this time of year, and especially after 9/11. You look at all of these police officers who did such a good job just as first responders in that emergency. We've seen other emergencies since, and hopefully this is... This will not have taken the lives of anyone. Hopefully no one is injured. We just don't know any of that information right now.
So the Port Authority, by the way, we're talking about 42nd and 8th. We're not talking about Penn Station.
No.
And we do say this, when you talk about when you talk about a busy station, this has 230,000 people on average going through every day.
Right, every weekday. So as you look at that headline right there, explosion near Times Square, it's a couple of blocks away from Times Square, but nonetheless, it is one of the major hubs here in New York City.
Bus terminal over there on the west side, and we know it is the holiday season. Those are three very suspicious factors, and I say that because it's not a secret that ISIS and other terror organized groups have targeted transportation hubs in the holiday season. They've announced it as such in some of their own publications. I mean, if you think of the city as a body, Steve, they've always targeted transportation, whether it's airlines, buses, or trains, because those are the blood vessels of that body.
Sure.
And again, three highly suspicious things which lead me to believe it could in fact be a
All right.
terrorism.
So Dan, the The mayor has just been briefed on everything. I'm certain he's going to have a press conference this morning once he knows more information. What's happening right now? What's going on? Because you used to, as an NYPD detective, Secret Service, what's going on behind the scenes right now?
Yeah, well, one of the first things they do is you have to create some sort of an evidence-free pathway and cordon off the scene so you can gather the evidence. If this was a pipe bomb, there have been some reports about that. They're going to need the fragmentation. They're going to need what kind of explosive was used. These are all pieces of evidence that are going to be necessary to reverse engineer this potential crime here and see what actually happened. It's tough. I mean, when you're talking about a bomb, the fragmentation on a pipe bomb can be pretty severe depending on what kind of explosive was used inside of it. So that's the first thing you need to do. And secondly, you want to make sure that this is the only attack. I mean, guys, as we've seen in the past here, there's no guarantee this is the only one. I can almost guarantee you right now the NYPD is on a heightened state of alert at other train stations, bus terminals, and airports throughout the city, telling their officers, obviously nobody panic here, but, give a second look to anything that may be suspicious right now.
Well, one great one fortuitous event is there's a firehouse right around the block. So they're able to get there quickly, and in a time in which you just live in gridlock at this hour in New York City, they might be able to get there on foot, even though I do see some trucks there, and it is quite loud in Midtown Manhattan at this hour. But you're getting multiple reports. I mean, you're getting different reports of different types of explosions. Can you give me an idea of the hierarchy? The NYPD in control, but the FBI also has a bureau here, along with various different Secret Service. Who's in charge?
Yeah, in the movies, Brian, you see it all the time. I used to be a Fed. I was a Secret Service agent and an NYPD cop, so I've seen it from both sides. And, in the movies, guy shows up with the federal agent badge and everybody clears away. That's just in the movie. It's not the way it works in the real world. The NYPD is a fantastic police department. The FBI knows that. It's a very symbiotic relationship. They work together. If it is terrorism, the FBI will always take the lead. Right. But that doesn't mean that the NYPD has a diminished role. It just means it's more cooperative, especially in a big city like New York and LA, where you have a really professional police department. It doesn't work otherwise.
Right. And Dan, as we look from the chopper shots as they look down in the Times Square area, and we do understand that apparently multiple ambulances were requested. My daughter goes in and out of the Port Authority twice a day, and over the last 6 months, there's been so much security inside the Port Authority. That is reassuring. But I'm seeing on Twitter right now, including ABC7 and their network as well, they say that a possible pipe bomb was detonated in a passageway below ground level at the Port Authority. There are other reports that apparently one person is in custody. There were a few injuries. Police have obtained video and are confident it is contained.
Yeah, the injuries part obviously has everybody concerned when you see that type of emergency medical response to the scene. But Steve, at that hour, I mean, you all know New York, Ainsley, Brian, Steve, you've been there. I've been there 1,000 times. These are such densely populated areas. If you have an explosion of almost any type, I mean, if you had an M80 firecracker go off, you're going to hurt somebody. And that's these terrorists. That's their sick thinking. So I'm not surprised to see that. I mean, everybody, I think, is praying right now that the injuries are minimal. Hopefully there's not a significant death count from this, but it'd be very difficult not to injure someone at that location. And that's also what leads me to believe that there may be some terrorist implication here.
Dan, we're actually just learning NYPD is confirming that a suspect is in custody. So this does appear to be, this was not an accident.
Yeah, and if there's a suspect in custody, we obviously know it's not a homicide bombing as well. And I believe in cases like this is a good thing. I mean, you get to the motive, you get to what kind of support network this person may or may not have had, what led to the radicalization process. And guys, for future attacks, this is all information that really helps. One of the problems with these homicide bombings, obviously, is he kills himself or she along with the rest of the people, and you never get to the bottom of what actually happened for you can be proactive in the future.
So we understand the NYPD is prepared to brief very soon. But if, of course, this suspect will be the same, if it in fact is true, and the initial reports sometimes are, sometimes aren't, that we have him in custody and he or she is alive, this will be the second one in a month. Dan, how do you explain that? We should be getting better at this. We shouldn't be more vulnerable at this, or have we just been dodging bullets for the last 10 years?
You know, Brian, the bad news, and pains me to tell you this, is these types of attacks, these low logistics, low planning attacks, whether they're using small arms to shoot in a crowd or whether it's a pipe bomb, they are nearly impossible to prevent using what I call like fireman techniques, like let's put out the fire afterwards. What I mean by that is if you're not an arsonist and you don't get active intelligence in advance of the attack to stop it, there's almost no way to stop it. What are you going to do with the Port Authority? They don't screen people on the way in, at least on the mass scale like they do at airports.
Will that change?
I don't know if it's possible, Ainsley. I really don't. I mean, do you set up magnetometer checkpoints? Yeah. And then, Ainsley, what's the black and white zone? I mean, then they just go right outside the magnetometer and do something.
Dan, one of our police sources, one of the Twitters I'm looking at, apparently the person involved in the detonation of the device, it is reported, went off prematurely. That person is in custody but was injured and may have been wearing some kind of suicide vest.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a terrifying wrinkle to this, and that would explain why they have a suspect in custody. Largely, as we've seen with these attacks in the past, historically, is the murderer and the terrorist kills themselves as well. There's no interest in egress and escaping from the scene. And when you said that they had someone in custody, I was a little puzzled. Now that explains it, that it may have been, in fact, a detonation in advance of what this person had wanted. Yeah, and that explains a lot. Right, and you wonder if it's a real vest or a fake vest. We've seen that before as well with the fake suicide vest.
And you know what, Dan? With 250,000 people going through the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and that location every weekday, on the coldest day of the year, a lot of people are wearing big coats. And you know what would be easy to conceal if you had some sort of an explosive device strapped to your chest, because everybody's wearing a big coat today.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You're absolutely correct. I remember being in the Secret Service doing events in the Northeast in the fall and winter, and that was always a big concern for us. Is you have a guy that shows up in a parka in a 99-degree day and down here in Palm City, Florida, sweating. Everybody obviously stares at him. But someone wearing two parkas in New York City on a day like today, when it's 30, 40 degrees, whatever it may be, probably even colder, it's not going to elicit any suspicion at all.
Hey, Dan,
it's a really good point. Yes,
hold on, we have our own Rob Schmidt, who's got to the scene. He's got a signal up, and he's able to take in what's happening and give us the latest information. Rob, where are you exactly, and what are you seeing?
Hey, Brian, we're at 43rd. I'm standing at 43rd and 8th, so the west side of Midtown. This is where the Port Authority is, so this is where all the buses come into the city. This is a major subway station here, so it's really an epicenter of how people get into the city, and it's Monday morning, and it's rush hour as people come in. So this, of course, would be a place that somebody that wanted to inflict a lot of damage would go to do that. We're only a few blocks from Times Square. We're only about 10 blocks from you guys there in Midtown. I ran over here as soon as we heard the initial report from the Bureau. Right now, we're trying to figure out what this is and to make sense of it. When I first got here, nothing was roped off, and there was a huge response, but there wasn't, there wasn't just a lot of panic. So it was interesting to see all of these police and firemen here, and everybody responding to this, but then getting here and just kind of standing around wondering what had happened. I walked into a deli over here trying to get some kind of basic information about what happened. I asked the guy, did you hear anything? Did you feel an explosion? Did you feel a rumble? Because I know the subway runs right underneath the blue line. The ACE runs right underneath 8th Avenue here. And I said, did you feel or hear anything? He said he didn't. So I'm not sure exactly what this is. It doesn't mean that nothing happened. Obviously, this is a maze of systems underneath New York City. But it could have been something that was just very small, that hopefully did not inflict a lot of damage is what we were hoping. I see a number of stretchers over here to my left that the FDNY has brought in, but they're not moving them downstairs yet. They're just kind of standing there and waiting. So I think it's all happening beneath me right now. They're trying to make sense of it at this point.
Rob, they blocked off the streets. How did you get in? Did you get in with your your news credentials, or did they just let anyone come in?
No, I slid in before it had really, developed into what it is now, which is now 42nd and 8th, which is, 42nd and Main, East-West Street through Manhattan. And that intersection is completely blocked off, and that is where the Port Authority physically is, where all those buses come in and where all the people come through. I'm at 43rd now because they pushed me back. But yeah, the subway lines, I believe, right now are suspended, and I know that there's major delays on buses coming in because their whole operation runs out of this intersection. So it's a mess, but hopefully there's not a lot of damage and not a lot of casualties in this or any injuries in this is what we're all hoping for. And right now it does feel like, even though there's been this massive response, there is kind of a very lackadaisical kind of attitude by first responders here. There's not a lot of running around, not a lot of panic here at the scene, just a lot of people here.
Absolutely. So if you're just tuning in, police confirm that pipe bombing of some sort at the Port Authority near the subway. Suspected bomber is in custody. It sounds like 2 people are hurt, including the suspect. Now here's the thing, Rob. The Port Authority, which it sounds like was the target, is how tens of thousands of people get into New York City. Is the Port Authority closed, and does that mean people who are on the rail lines heading in are on trains that are stopped? Because my daughter is in the Lincoln Tunnel right now trying to come to work, and her bus is not moving. So where are people going to be going?
That's a great question. And the Lincoln Tunnel comes right in here too. I mean, the tunnel spits you out at like 40th, I think around 40th Street and 9th Avenue or something like that. So she's going to be coming in right into the thick of all this as well. I don't know if the Port Authority is closed. I don't think that it is. I think they're going to try and work around this thing and try, because I mean, you've got, hundreds if not thousands of buses and trains and everything comes through. A lot of it comes right into this area here. So I mean, this is really how New York operates. So,
I'm not sure if they will, Rob, let them in.
This area, so.
Based on what we saw after 9/11, I don't know. Dan Bongino is worried about other attacks that might have been planned. I bet they're not going to let those buses come into Port Authority for that very reason.
So what I saw from the NYPD is that they were expecting delays on Port Authority and that the subway had been suspended. So
Rob,
I think that it definitely had more of an impact on the subway.
Rob, hold that thought a second. We're just getting in new footage from recent footage from inside the Port Authority. There are reports from the Times-Mirror and others that there was a wild stampede after the explosion actually happened. Let's look at this video together for the first time. And I'm not sure if you'll hear anything on it, but with everyone with an iPhone, let's listen.
See, what you notice there is we were told that there was a stampede inside the Port Authority as soon as they started to evacuate. And you can see some people in the background actually taking off.
It looks like the people wouldn't know. Just you see, it looks like a police officer running. Maybe he just got word. It looked like the other people were not in a big hurry, so maybe they didn't know at that point.
Yeah, I know Steve Scalise's his Secret Service did not know anything except for an explosion at Port Authority, and that was 10 minutes ago.
We are being told also, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, actually, I can just read it on Twitter, that she's saying that POTUS, the President of the United States, has been briefed on this explosion. Can we bring back in Dan Bongino to ask him, because he was Secret Service, curious to find out, or even Dr. Gorka, I know we have both of them on standby, what's happening now at the White House when the president is notified? What happens next? Do we have any of them on the phone? Okay, all right, Dan, I'll start with you first.
Sure. Yeah, well, at the White House, you have the National Security Team obviously is looking at if this is some kind of a terrorist incident. At this point, it looks frighteningly so. And you want to know, again, if this is it. I mean, that's obviously the primary question right now, Ainsley. The investigation is secondary to triaging your needs, to making sure that this is the only attack. You don't want to preemptively declare that everything's over, and then, God forbid, you have another explosion, say down at a train station on whatever, downtown Manhattan or somewhere. Obviously saving lives is paramount, and I'll bet there's some heightened state of alert right now. And this is the kind of thing the president's briefed on. In my experience at the White House, immediately everything stops, everybody rushes over.
Surely. Let's bring in Sebastian Gorka. He's an expert at terrorism. He joins us right now from our nation's capital. Sebastian, as you look in. What are your observations about what appears to be a pipe bomb or one report of a suicide vest explosion near the Port Authority of New York City?
Well, good morning, Steve. I reached out to my contacts in the counterterrorism division at the Bure, at the NYPD half an hour ago, and they were already on level 3 alert, which is one of the highest levels of alert. But as your coverage shows, they have responded. The first responders are there. The professionalism is clear, but there isn't that heightened level of a very serious attack having already occurred. The initial reports are that it was a failed bomb attack, but the individual is in custody. So now it's going to be a question of deploying the investigators to find out who this individual is. Were they part of a broader conspiracy? But the facts remain the facts. New York is one of the most seductive, important targets for any jihadi organization, whether it's an international one like ISIS or whether it's somebody who has been recruited domestically in the United States. And they've said again and again and again, Al-Qaeda and ISIS in their magazines, in their internet publications, you want to affect as much damage. So what do? You look for the highest concentrations possible of unarmed civilians, and the Port Authority would be a classic potential target for groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS.
So, Danny, on top of this, you know, when the president comes out and says, I'm going to be moving our embassy in Jerusalem, there's a reaction in Israel and throughout the Middle East, in Lebanon. But do you think there's also an increase in security here, especially with the United Nations blistering our ambassador over the last few days, and then, of course, the location of so many other important people?
Yeah, there probably is, and that's really sad, Brian. I mean, think about it. We just reaffirmed the fact that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and we have to worry about violent outbreaks throughout the world. I know during my time at the NYPD, anything that was associated with Judaism, whether it's synagogues or an Israeli embassy, was always a target that required extra NYPD and federal government attention. It's really sad, but it's a valid question, and I think you're right. Who knows? Maybe this did have something to do with it. I'm sure ISIS will, if they do claim credit, will say it did, just to make sure they get the fundraising capabilities off of it as well.
All right, let's bring in Rob Schmidt. Once again, he is just about a block. Well, we just lost his signal. I was going to ask him about the Port Authority being open, and we have just been told that apparently it is still in operation. However, one of the entrances is closed. I'm getting a report from my daughter. Apparently the bus is moving and she's getting closer to it. It'll be interesting to see what happens when she comes out of the Lincoln Tunnel. There you can see the chopper view down at 42nd and 8th Avenue.
Right.
And as you can imagine, the traffic in New York City on the west side is horrific.
Dr. Gorka, I always understand, and we see these terms, but they feel the situation, the attack is contained. There seems to be one person in custody. I know Israel has always lived by the decree of get things back to normal as quick as possible. A bomb attack, get the bus out of there, you know, you clean up the streets, get people back on the streets. Do we have that same philosophy when it comes to post-attack security, if it is indeed post-attack?
Great point, Brian. Israel really has got this issue down, whether it's a shopping mall or whether it's anywhere, a bus station that has high concentrations of unarmed civilians. There is a heightened level of security at all times. There are metal detectors outside key areas. What we need to do, Brian, in this incident, whatever happens to be the case, just reinforces the key reality. This administration is crushing the jihadis in the Middle East, but we as Americans must understand that the front line in this war isn't in a desert 8,000 miles away. The front line is when you leave your house in the morning. It is everywhere. It can be a discotheque in Florida. It can be a Christmas party in San Bernardino. It can be a bicycle path in New York. So this see something, say something isn't just a catchy bromide. It is something all Americans should live by. We don't change our lives and we don't give in to the terrorists, but you could stop an attack or you could save lives if you see something suspicious, whether it's a package, whether it's a person wearing bulky clothing when they shouldn't do. Just be alert to the world around you. Don't walk down the street staring at your mobile phone as so many people do.
Okay, Dan Bongino, we just got word from former Commissioner Bill Bratton.
Yes, he's saying that this was an ISIS-inspired attack. What do you make of that?
Wow, well, I'm not surprised. I mean, you had the big three indicators there. The transportation networks, they've always targeted because of the psychological impact upon the community after the attack. I mean, guys, everybody uses a car, a bus, a train, or a plane. I mean, we're not Supermen. We don't fly. We have to use these devices. They've always targeted transportation. Rush hour, you want the most amount of people, maximum impact. New York City, maximum press coverage, big target. Those three things, I mean, led us to believe early that there was probably some nexus to terror.
Dr. Gorka, if this is an ISIS-inspired attack, and we do indeed have the bomber in custody, we have to be able to question him before he lawyers up in an international setting, not in a police setting. Don't you agree? And is the administration ready to do that?
I think the president is. I think we've seen...
Not with the bike bomber. Not with the bike path bomber. We turned him over to authorities.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the White House's call. But look, you know better than anybody. You wrote the book on the Tripoli pirates. This isn't a common criminal. If this turns out to be an ISIS-connected or inspired plot, this is somebody who is at war with us, even if they're the representative of a non-nation state. The idea that we treat them like a bank robber and we Mirandize them, we give them all the rights of a U.S. citizen committing a crime is just absolutely insane. We are at war with global jihadism, and they should be treated as illegal combatants, just as we did under the Bush administration.
I hope we snap out of it and do that. We do have a report of the bomb. It was found on a subway platform.
That's where it exploded, which would suggest that they were trying to get into a train car, which could have had devastating consequences. Let's go to Rob Schmidt, who is near the location where just about a block away from the Port Authority. Rob, we received word from one of our producers that the Port Authority was open, but now it sounds like it's closed again.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm about a block away from the Port Authority. Here come another stream of cars coming in here. We can show you now as they move through here. The scene is ever expanding at this point. They keep pushing people back and bringing in more, first responders and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, right now I would say this is probably, I would argue, this is one of the busiest intersections in Manhattan early in the morning, right before everybody gets to work. As you see all these firemen lined up here waiting to go in or do whatever they have to do. And this has just been a huge response. But if you were trying to pull off an attack, which now we learned morning right before everybody gets to work, as you see all these firemen lined up here waiting to go in or do whatever they have to do. And this has just been a huge response. But if you were trying to pull off an attack, which now we learned from the former commissioner here, the former police commissioner, as he said it was ISIS inspired, this would be a place you would go. This or Grand Central or maybe Penn Station. But this is just a huge area where a lot of people come into the city. A lot of people from New Jersey and up north and out east on Long Island and everywhere else. So this is a major place for people to come in.
Rob, we're learning now. The mayor is saying that. Rob, the mayor is saying this is an active crime scene. You can see all the police officers coming through too. I can't help but think you've got Steve, whose daughter's trapped in the tunnel trying to get. She's on a bus coming from New Jersey through the tunnel into New York City, which is about 2 blocks from where you're standing.